Car crash nearly took her life. The black CEO who saved her went viral for a shocking twist. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. What is HE doing in my wife's room? The words didn't echo. They cut. The hospital room had been quiet seconds before.
Soft blue walls.
Monitors humming in steady rhythm. A clear IV line dripping life back into fragile veins. The kind of sterile calm that follows chaos. On the bed, Claire Whitmore lay propped against white pillows, her head wrapped in clean gauze skin, pale but breathing steady. Her fingers trembled slightly in the hand of the man standing beside her. He hadn't let go. Marcus Hale stood tall at the edge of her hospital bed, navy suit, immaculate despite the faint tear at the cuff. His right hand was wrapped in fresh bandage, knuckles bruised beneath the gauze. A reminder of broken glass, of twisted metal, of 7 minutes that refused to disappear. Behind him, a nurse in pink scrubs watched quietly. Not nervous, not surprised, just aware. The door had burst open without a knock. Daniel Whitmore stood there now, chest-heaving tie, loosened fear still clinging to his voice like smoke. "I asked you something," Daniel snapped. "Why is he here?" Marcus didn't turn immediately. He looked down at Claire instead. Her eyes were open now, confused, searching, alive. That part mattered. "He was here before you were," the nurse said gently. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Excuse me, he's the one who stabilized her airway," she replied. "If he hadn't, I didn't ask for a story," Daniel cut in sharply. His gaze shifted to Marcus, scanning him up and down. Suit, dark skin, bandaged hand. Suspicion moved faster than gratitude. "You filming something?" Daniel asked. Trying to get attention, the accusation hung in the air like disinfectant, sharp and unnecessary. Marcus finally turned. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was tired. "I held her airway open for 7 minutes, he said calmly. Her oxygen was dropping. Silence. The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep. 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 Daniel scoffed. 7 minutes? You're what, an EMT now? Marcus didn't answer that. He adjusted his grip slightly, careful not to disturb the IV line. Claire's fingers curled faintly in response. Outside the window, late afternoon light filtered through pale blinds. It softened nothing. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Marcus. Daniel stepped further into the room. "You should have waited for professionals," he said. "People trained for this." The nurse inhaled quietly. Marcus met Daniel's eyes fully now. There was something in that look Daniel didn't recognize. Not arrogance. Not guilt. Memory. Glass shattering. Smoke filling lungs. A voice years ago saying, "We'll need to verify insurance first." He blinked once, pushing the flash of it back. "She didn't have time to wait," Marcus said. Daniel laughed under his breath.
"So you decided to play hero?"
"No," Marcus replied. He released Claire's hand, slowly, carefully placing it back against the blanket. "Not retreating, just repositioning. I decided to stay." The room shifted, not loudly, but noticeably. The nurse stepped forward, slightly breaking protocol without announcing it. When paramedics arrived, she said quietly, her cervical spine was already supported. "Airway clear. Pulse stabilized." She looked at Marcus's bandaged hand. He cut himself, breaking the glass. Daniel's eyes flicked to the gauze for the first time. Marcus followed his glance. It wasn't locked, Marcus said. It was jammed. Daniel swallowed. For a second, something softer threatened to surface. Then pride stepped in. You could have heard her, Daniel muttered. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I could have read. Another silence. But this one felt heavier. Claire shifted weakly on the bed. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. They told you to leave, didn't they? Daniel turned sharply. Claire don't, but her eyes were on Marcus. He held her gaze. They did, he said. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, peep. Beep, peep. Alive. And Marcus Hale stood there not as a headline, not as a viral clip, not yet as a CEO, just as the man who refused to walk away. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the polished hospital floor before turning back. You keep saying that like it means something he said, like staying makes you qualified. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He stepped back half a pace from the bed, giving Claire space while never fully withdrawing from the room. His bandaged hand flexed, slightly testing the pull of stitches beneath gauze. I didn't claim anything, Marcus said evenly. I acted. Daniel let out a dry laugh. Acted. Right. The nurse adjusted the IV drip, pretending not to listen while hearing every word. Outside the room, muted hospital sounds drifted down the corridor, rolling carts, distant footsteps, a code announcement somewhere 2 floors below. Life moving. Systems running. Inside this room, something else was unfolding. Daniel stopped pacing. Let me ask you something, he said. When you ran up to that car, did you even know what you were doing? Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Not in anger. In precision. Yes, Sess. Daniel shook his head. Because, from what I heard, police had to pull you back. You were interfering. There it was the version of the story already forming. Marcus held his gaze. They tried, he said quietly. A flicker of surprise crossed Daniel's face. They tried, he repeated. I was compressing the roof frame to widen the opening, Marcus explained.
Smoke was building inside.
She was losing responsiveness. The nurse looked up at that. Not impressed, validated. Daniel folded his arms. And you just happen to know how to do that a beat. I've trained for high-impact response scenarios, Marcus said. Vehicle extrication basics. Airway stabilization. Trauma containment. Daniel stared at him like the words were a foreign language. You're telling me you're some kind of secret paramedic, he scoffed. Marcus didn't correct the tone. No. Silence stretched. Claire shifted again, eyes moving between the two men. She was awake enough now to feel the tension, not strong enough to stop it. You were shouting, she murmured weakly. Daniel turned instantly. Claire, don't strain yourself. But she looked past him. At the crash, she whispered. Someone was shouting! Marcus nodded once. You were conscious for a few seconds, he said gently. You were trying to turn your head. Her brow furrowed faintly. They said, move away, she said. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. Marcus met her eyes. They did, he confirmed. Daniel stepped forward again. Because that's what you do. You clear the area until professionals arrive? Marcus's voice didn't rise. She had 30 seconds before hypoxia would worsen. The word hung there. Daniel didn't respond. The nurse finally spoke again, soft but firm. Her oxygen saturation was critically low when EMS transferred her, she said. Whoever supported her airway gave her a chance. Daniel looked between them. A narrative was slipping. He grabbed onto something else. You don't look like first response, he muttered. The room went still. Not explosive. Still. Marcus held that statement in the air for a moment. Let it exist. Let it reveal itself. What does first response look like? He asked quietly. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Claire's fingers tightened faintly in the blanket, and for the first time since he walked into the room, Daniel realized something uncomfortable. The man he told to wait for real help had been the only help that showed up in time. Daniel looked away first. Not in surrender. In discomfort. What does first response look like? Marcus had asked. The question stayed in the room long after the words settled. Daniel cleared his throat. That's not what I meant. Marcus didn't press him. He didn't need to. A soft knock interrupted the silence. The nurse stepped aside as another hospital staff member entered quietly, tablet in hand, expression cautious. Mr. Whitmore? She asked gently. Daniel turned. Yes, there's media downstairs asking about the crash. The word shifted the temperature. Media, Daniel frowned. Why? The staff member hesitated. The incident was live-streamed.
Several angles.
It's circulating online. Marcus's eyes didn't move. Daniel blinked, circulating how the nurse exchanged a glance with the staff member. Trending, she said carefully. Claire stirred faintly. What happened? Daniel moved closer to her bedside. Nothing you need to worry about. But the tablet screen was already awake. The staff member turned it slightly toward Daniel. A paused frame filled the display, twisted metal.
Smoke rising.
And a tall black man kneeling against a crushed driver's door forearm, braced inside the shattered window. Blood running down his wrist. The caption above the video read, "Random man argues with police at crash scene. Hero or clout chaser." Daniel's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous, he muttered. The staff member tapped the screen. The video resumed. A shaky voice narrated from behind the camera, some guy's trying to act like he knows what he's doing. Police telling him to step back. The footage zoomed. Marcus's voice could be heard, calm but firm. She's losing airway stability. I need 30 seconds. Then another voice, Daniel's. Back up. Where's real help? The room went quiet. On the screen, flashing patrol lights reflected off broken glass. An officer stepped forward, hand raised, attempting to pull Marcus away. Marcus didn't fight. He didn't shout. He kept one hand steady inside the vehicle. Daniel swallowed. That's not the full context, he said quickly. The nurse watched him. The video cut to another angle, someone closer to the ground this time. You could see Marcus's hands supporting Claire's jaw. Hear him counting under his breath. Stay with me. Stay with me. Then the sirens. Paramedics rushing in. One of them saying clearly, airways open. Who stabilized her? The clip froze. Views, 4.8 million. Hashtag below it, crash hero. Daniel stared at the number like it had personally betrayed him. This doesn't prove anything, he said. Marcus finally spoke. It proves she was alive when they arrived. Daniel looked at him sharply. You're enjoying this. Marcus's expression didn't change. No. Another notification buzzed on the tablet. A news banner popped up. Helix Dynamics, CEO identified in highway rescue incident. The nurse looked up slowly. Daniel frowned. Helix, what? Marcus's phone vibrated quietly in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. Not yet. The hospital room felt smaller now. Claire's eyes moved between the screen and the man beside her bed. You stayed, she whispered again. Marcus met her gaze. Yes. Outside the room, footsteps gathered. Whispers. A camera shutter somewhere down the hall. The narrative wasn't just shifting. It was turning. And for the first time since he walked in, Daniel realized something else. The story leaving this hospital was no longer the one he'd been telling himself. The knock this time was not soft. It was deliberate. Two hospital administrators stepped into the hallway outside the room, speaking in hushed tones with a security officer. Behind them, through the glass panel, flashes from cameras bounced faintly against the corridor walls. Daniel looked at the door. What is happening? He demanded. The nurse exhaled slowly. It looks like someone recognized him. Recognized. The word felt heavier than viral. Marcus's phone vibrated again, and again. He reached into his jacket, this time glancing briefly at the screen. 17 missed calls. 3 from his executive assistant. 1 from the city's emergency response director. Several from numbers he didn't bother saving. He muted it. Daniel noticed. "You're not even surprised," he said. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket. "No." Claire shifted slightly against the pillows, recognized how before anyone could answer the hospital television mounted in the corner of the room flickered to life. A nurse from the hallway must have turned it on. Breaking news banner. The same crash footage looped this time, clearer, stabilized, professionally edited. The anchor spoke with practiced urgency. The man identified in yesterday's highway rescue has now been confirmed as Marcus Hale, founder and CEO of Helix Dynamics, Daniel Froese, a technology and infrastructure firm responsible for developing over 40% of the state's integrated emergency response network. Silence. Not dramatic. Dense. Daniel looked slowly at Marcus. "You're that Marcus Hale." Marcus didn't nod proudly. He didn't smile. "Yes." Claire's breathing hitched slightly, not in fear, but in realization. The anchor continued. Sources confirmed that Helix Dynamics partnered with the city last year to upgrade ambulance dispatch AI systems and trauma routing algorithms. The nurse turned fully toward Marcus now. "That's why you knew about hypoxia timing," she said quietly. Marcus met her gaze. "I funded the pilot studies," he replied, "and trained with the response teams." Daniel let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but wasn't. "So this whole time," he said, shaking his head, "you're some billionaire tech executive playing firefighter." Marcus's eyes sharpened, not aggressively, but precisely. "I'm someone who invests in systems," he said, "and understands how long they take to arrive." Daniel's throat tightened. The memory replayed in his head now, not the viral version.
The real one.
Him shouting, "Back up, where's real help?" Marcus kneeling, not arguing, just working. Outside the room, the hallway grew louder. Reporters pressing for confirmation. Hospital PR scrambling. Claire looked at Marcus carefully. "You could have left," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "They were pulling you away." Yes. Daniel stared at him. "You should have told them who you were," Daniel muttered. Marcus looked back at him steadily. "And what would that have changed?" Daniel opened his mouth. Closed it. Because they both knew the answer. Everything. And that was exactly the point. The hallway outside the room had turned into a low storm. Muffled questions. Footsteps. Saps. The faint pop of camera flashes through frosted glass. Inside, no one moved. Daniel stared at Marcus like the man in front of him had split into 2 people, the random guy from the crash, and the name scrolling across the television. "You built the system," Daniel said slowly. "The dispatch grid. The routing software." "Yes, Sess." "And you were just driving by." Marcus didn't answer immediately. Claire watched him closely now, her voice still thin but clearer. "You weren't just driving by," she said. He looked at her. "No." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" Marcus exhaled once. "Not heavy. Controlled. I was auditing response time." Daniel blinked. Auditing. Marcus nodded slightly. "We've been reviewing data on suburban highway response delays," he said. "There's a 7-minute gap between crash detection and full paramedic arrival in that corridor." The nurse went still. 7 minutes, she repeated softly. "Yes, Sess." Daniel's chest tightened. "You're telling me you were testing your own system?" "I was observing it," Marcus corrected. "From the ground." Daniel let out a short, incredulous laugh. "So this was some kind of experiment to you?" The accusation came fast. "Defensive. Desperate." Marcus didn't flinch. It stopped being observation the moment I saw her car roll, he said evenly.
Silence pressed in again.
Claire's eyes searched his face. You knew, she whispered. You knew how long it would take. Marcus met her gaze. Yes, Sess. Daniel shook his head, pacing once toward the window and back. You could have stepped aside when police told you to. Yes, Sess. You could have said your name. Yes, as. The repetition wasn't defiance. It was fact. Daniel stopped pacing. Why didn't you? The question finally carried something different. Not accusation. Confusion. Marcus looked down at his bandaged hand. For a moment, the hospital room dissolved. Another room surfaced instead. Fluorescent lights. Plastic chairs bolted to a tile floor. A nurse saying we're waiting on confirmation. A monitor going flat before confirmation ever came. He blinked once. Came back. Because a name shouldn't be required for urgency, he said quietly. Daniel swallowed. Claire's fingers curled faintly against the blanket. You've done this before, she said. Marcus nodded once. My mother died waiting, he said. The words didn't explode. They landed. She was conscious when the ambulance arrived, he continued. She wasn't by the time they admitted her. The nurse lowered her eyes. Daniel didn't speak. Marcus's voice remained steady. I built systems so response wouldn't depend on how someone looks, or who they are, or what card they carry. Another buzz from his phone. He ignored it. I stayed yesterday, he said, looking at Claire because 7 minutes is a long time when no one thinks you belong there. Daniel's breath caught. He remembered his own words now. Back up, up. Whereas real help, the room didn't feel hostile anymore. It felt exposed. And for the first time since the crash, Daniel wasn't defending his pride. He was confronting it. The hallway noise grew louder. A hospital administrator stepped inside, composed but tense. Behind him stood a uniformed police captain, older, grayer posture, disciplined. Daniel noticed the badge first. Marcus noticed the eyes. Mr. Hale, the administrator, began carefully. We weren't aware you were still here. Marcus gave a small nod. I didn't announce it. The captain stepped forward. We need a moment, he said, glancing at Daniel. Claire shifted slightly. It's fine, she murmured. The captain removed his hat. That mattered. Mr. Hale, he said evenly, I was briefed on the incident footage. And on Officer Ramirez's body cam. Daniel's shoulders stiffened. The captain continued. You were physically restrained while attempting airway stabilization. Marcus didn't correct the phrasing. Yes, as. The captain inhaled once. That shouldn't have happened. Silence. Not dramatic. Earnest. As. Daniel looked between them. Restrained, he repeated. Marcus's bandaged hand flexed faintly. It was brief, he said. The captain's jaw tightened. It was unnecessary. Another pause. We train our officers to secure scenes, the captain continued, but we also train them to assess competence. The footage suggests you were competent. The nurse almost smiled at that understatement. Daniel's face shifted. You tried to pull him off her? He asked quietly. The captain nodded once. Yes. Daniel looked at Marcus. And you stayed anyway. Yes, yes. The repetition no longer felt like restraint. It felt like integrity. The captain cleared his throat. The city is issuing a formal apology, he said. Publicly. Within the hour. Marcus tilted his head slightly. That won't be necessary. The administrator blinked. With respect, sir, it absolutely is. Marcus looked at Claire. Focus the apology on response reform, he said calmly. Not on me. The captain studied him. You're not interested in making this a statement. Marcus's voice remained level. It already is one. Daniel felt something shift in his chest again. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even vindication. It was standard. Marcus stepped slightly away from the bed, now giving Claire more space, not less. What matters, he said, is that the next person doesn't lose 7 minutes because someone hesitated. The captain nodded slowly. We'll review the corridor protocol, he said. And officer discretion during medical intervention. The administrator added quickly, the mayor's office would like to speak with you. Marcus almost smiled at that. They have my office number. Another buzz from his phone. This time, he glanced at it. A text from his assistant board meeting moved. Media requesting statement. Market reacting positively. Marcus locked the screen. Daniel noticed. You're walking away from this? He asked. Marcus looked at him. I walked toward it yesterday, he replied. The weight of that answer settled over the room. Claire's voice steadier. Now you didn't raise your voice once. Marcus met her eyes. I didn't need to. Outside, the cameras were still waiting. Inside, the lesson had already landed. And for the first time since the crash, no one in that room mistook him for anything less than exactly who he was. The hallway had quieted, not because the cameras left, because the story had shifted. The police captain stepped out first, already on his phone. The hospital administrator followed, speaking in clipped tones about coordination and timing. The door closed. For the first time since Daniel had walked in, the room felt private again. Claire studied Marcus carefully. You don't look angry, she said. I'm not, he replied. Daniel leaned against the wall, now the earlier edge gone from his voice. I would be, he admitted. Marcus considered that. Anger is expensive, he said calmly. It costs clarity. Daniel let out a quiet breath. You built the emergency grid, he said. You fund the dispatch AI. You train with response teams. Yes, Cess. And yesterday when you saw her car flip, Marcus's eyes flicked toward Claire again. I didn't see a data point, he said. Daniel swallowed. I saw a life. The words landed differently this time. Not as defense, as truth. Claire shifted slightly, her voice gaining strength. When you were holding my hand in the car, she said softly, you kept saying something. Marcus tilted his head. I don't remember. You said, stay with me. You matter. The room went still. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Marcus didn't move. He didn't deny it. You told me to wait for real help, Marcus said quietly, looking at Daniel now. Daniel stiffened slightly. I know. Marcus's voice remained steady. I was already there. No accusation. No volume. Just precision. Daniel's jaw tightened, not in anger this time, but in recognition. I judged you, he said. Marcus didn't rush to absolve him. Yes, he replied. The honesty hung between them. Daniel stepped forward slowly. I saw a man in a suit, he said, out of place. And I thought he trailed off. Marcus finished it for him. You thought I didn't belong. Daniel nodded. Claire looked between them. You saved me, she said, clearer now. And you didn't need anyone to know who you were. Marcus gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. If someone needs my R-sum before I help them, he said quietly, then the system is already broken. Another silence. But this one felt clean. Not tense. Not defensive. Resolved. Daniel straightened slightly. I'm sorry, he said. The words weren't polished. They weren't rehearsed. They were real. Marcus held his gaze for a moment. Then he nodded once. Make sure the next person doesn't hear what you said to me, he replied. Daniel absorbed that. Claire reached for Marcus's bandaged hand gently. You didn't raise your voice, she whispered. Marcus met her eyes. I raised the standard. And in that hospital room with no cameras inside, that was the line that changed everything. Marcus stepped back from the bed, slowly, not abruptly, just enough to signal that his part in the room was ending. Outside, the noise returned in waves. Reporters calling his name now. Not random man. Not clout chaser. His name, Daniel glanced toward the door. They're going to keep pushing until you speak. Marcus adjusted his cuff gently over the edge of the bandage. They always do. Claire watched him like someone seeing the full picture for the first time. You don't like attention, she said. Marcus gave the smallest hint of a smile. Attention isn't the goal. Daniel frowned. Then what as Marcus looked toward the window where late afternoon light stretched across the hospital floor. Correction, he said. Daniel didn't understand at first. Marcus continued. When a system fails quietly, people adapt to it. They blame traffic, budget, timing. When bias slows response, they call it procedure. His gaze shifted back to Daniel. I don't let quiet failures stay quiet. The door opened slightly. A hospital PR representative peeked inside. Mr. Hale, the press, is requesting a statement. The mayor's office is on standby. Marcus nodded once. Give me 2 minutes. The door closed again. Daniel studied him. You could crush the department, Daniel said. The officers. The city. Legally. Yes, says. You're not going to. No. Daniel exhaled. Why Marcus's voice remained even. Because punishment fixes headlines. Reform fixes timelines. The words sat there simple, heavy. Claire shifted upright slightly, wincing but determined. You're not angry, she said again. Marcus turned to her. I was, he admitted. A beat. Years ago. Daniel caught that. What changed Marcus looked down at his bandaged hand. I learned that proving people wrong is temporary. He met Daniel's eyes. Building something they can't ignore is permanent. The hallway grew louder again. His name repeated through overlapping voices. Daniel straightened. They're waiting. Marcus took one slow breath, then another. He walked toward the door but stopped before opening it. He turned back once more, meeting Daniel's gaze fully. You told me to wait for real help, he said quietly. Daniel swallowed. Marcus held the moment not as revenge, as clarity. Next time he added, assume it might already be there. Then he opened the door and stepped into the light. The hallway exploded the moment Marcus stepped out. Mr. Hale, did the police mishandle the scene? Were you profiled? Are you filing charges? Microphones extended? Cameras leaned forward like they might swallow him whole. Marcus didn't rush. He didn't smile for optics. He didn't wave. He walked until he reached the small podium the hospital staff had hurriedly arranged. Not grand. Not staged. Just functional. Flashes burst across his face. For a second, the viral version of him hovered in the air, the kneeling figure in smoke, the bandaged hand in broken glass. Then he spoke. My name is Marcus Hale, he began, voice steady, unforced. Yesterday, I happened to be present when a vehicle overturned on Route 17. Happened. Not hero. Not headline. Happened. Reporters scribbled. I did what anyone trained to respond would do, he continued. I assessed airway-stabilized cervical alignment and remained until emergency services arrived. A journalist interrupted. Sir, officers were seen attempting to remove you from the scene. Do you believe bias played a role? The question hung sharp. Marcus didn't blink. I believe urgency should not require credentials to be respected, he said calmly. Another reporter, will you pursue disciplinary action? No. The answer landed instantly. No, Marcus nodded slightly. I've already spoken with department leadership. What matters is protocol improvement, not public punishment. Cameras adjusted focus. Behind him, through the glass, the hospital corridor reflected light like a second stage. I built response systems because time is unforgiving, he continued. 7 minutes can change the outcome of a life. A pause. Yesterday, 7 minutes did. A murmur moved through the press crowd. Do you believe you were misjudged? Someone asked. Marcus considered the wording. I believe assumptions slow response, he said. And delay is expensive. He let that settle. I don't need recognition for stepping forward, but I will not step back to make others comfortable. The sentence didn't rise. It anchored. Yesterday wasn't about who I am, he finished. It was about whether someone would stay. Silence. Not confusion. Respect. One final question pushed forward. What would you say to the man who told you to wait for real help? Marcus's eyes held steady. I would say, he replied, voice level and precise, real help doesn't always arrive in the form you expect. No smirk. No victory. Just standard. He stepped away from the podium without taking more questions. Behind him, headlines were already rewriting themselves. Not random man at crash scene, but CEO demands reform after highway rescue, and somewhere upstairs a heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Alive? Because someone stayed. By the time Marcus returned upstairs, the hallway had thinned. Reporters were already pivoting toward live trucks and studio calls. Police officials were drafting statements. Hospital administrators were rehearsing phrases like collaborative review and protocol alignment. The storm had moved on. The room was quiet again. Claire was sitting slightly more upright now, color returning faintly to her face. Daniel stood near the window phone in hand, but not scrolling. Just thinking. Marcus stepped back inside without announcement. Daniel looked up first. They're calling you a hero, he said. Marcus closed the door gently behind him. They're calling me visible, he corrected. Claire gave a small smile. Daniel exhaled. I watched the full body cam, he admitted. They grabbed your arm. You pulled away, but you didn't escalate. Marcus loosened his cuff slightly where the bandage pressed. I couldn't afford escalation, he said. Daniel frowned. Why not? Marcus met his eyes. Because if I had raised my voice, the narrative would change. The truth of that settled heavy. Claire understood before Daniel did. They would have said you were aggressive, she whispered. Marcus didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. Daniel's jaw tightened again, but this time at something larger than himself. You had to stay calm, he said quietly. Yes, Cess. And that's not fair. Marcus gave a faint, almost tired smile. Fair isn't the metric, he replied. Effective is. Silence. Daniel ran a hand over his face. I keep replaying what I said, he admitted. Where's real help? Marcus didn't rescue him from the memory. Daniel looked up. You knew exactly what I meant, he said. Yes, Cess. And you stayed anyway. Yes, Ness. The repetition wasn't restraint anymore. It was discipline. Claire shifted slightly, her voice steadier now. When you were holding my hand in that car, she said you didn't sound angry. Marcus looked at her. I wasn't thinking about being right, he said. I was thinking about keeping you breathing. The monitor beside her punctuated that statement with its steady rhythm. Alive. Daniel stepped forward. I can't undo what I assumed, he said. No, Marcus replied. But you can correct it. Daniel nodded slowly. I will. Marcus checked the time on his phone briefly. A board meeting waiting. A city waiting. Systems moving. But for a moment longer he stayed. Not because cameras were watching. Not because headlines were forming. But because correction didn't end at a podium. It began in a room. And this room, quiet, now steady human, was where the real reform started. 2 days later, the footage had stopped trending, but the conversation hadn't. Marcus stood at the head of a long glass conference table inside Helix Dynamics downtown headquarters.
Screens along the wall displayed response time analytics in clean blue graphs.
Route 17 was highlighted in red. Board members watched quietly. This isn't about optics, Marcus said, hands resting lightly on the table. It's about latency. A slide shifted. Average officer interference during medical intervention, 1842 seconds. That delay, Marcus continued, can compromise airway stability in trauma cases. No one in the room argued. They didn't need to. One board member leaned forward. You're proposing policy integration with law enforcement training? Yes. And you're certain the department will cooperate? Marcus's expression didn't change. They already called. A quiet ripple moved across the table. He tapped the screen once. New proposal appeared: Community Bystander Medical Authorization Initiative. If someone demonstrates competence in emergency stabilization, Marcus said officers are trained to assess skill before removal. A board member raised a brow. That's going to meet resistance. Marcus nodded slightly. Resistance is slower than reform, he replied. Across the city, Daniel Whitmore sat in his office staring at the crash photo that had once angered him. Now it unsettled him differently. He replayed the moment again, back up. Where's real help? He closed his eyes briefly. Then he opened his laptop and began typing. Not a defensive statement. Not an explanation. A donation. To the same initiative Marcus was proposing. Upstairs in the hospital, Claire watched a nurse adjust her IV. They're updating response protocols, the nurse said with a small smile. Your crash started a city review. Claire looked down at her hands. No, she corrected gently. Someone staying did. Back at Helix, Marcus stepped toward the window overlooking the city grid he'd helped modernize. Cars moved. Lights shifted. Signals pulsed. Systems. He didn't chase headlines. He redesigned infrastructure. His assistant stepped beside him quietly. The department accepted your training framework, she said. Marcus nodded once. Schedule the first session, he replied. The city had moved on from the viral clip. But somewhere in a future crash, when an officer hesitated for half a second, they might pause instead. Assess competence and let someone stay. Because reform doesn't shout, it integrates. And Marcus Hale didn't raise his voice. He recalibrated the system. 3 weeks later, the footage was no longer viral. It had been replaced by something newer, louder, easier. But inside a modest training facility just outside the city limits, a different kind of shift was taking place. Rows of uniformed officers stood in a simulation bay. A wrecked vehicle frame sat center stage, smoke machine humming lightly to recreate the blur of urgency. Marcus stood at the front, not in a suit this time. Black training jacket, rolled sleeves. The bandage gone. The scar still faint along his knuckles. An instructor gestured toward him. This is Mr. Hale, she said. You've seen the footage. Today we're studying decision timing. Marcus stepped forward. No, he corrected gently. You're studying recognition. The officers listened. He walked toward the crushed vehicle frame and placed one hand against the edge of the door. When you arrive at a scene, he said evenly, you're scanning for threats. Fire. Instability.
Civilian interference.
A few heads nodded. But sometimes, he continued, what looks like interference is intervention. He paused. Your job isn't to control the loudest presence. He looked up at them. It's to assess the most effective one. Silence. Not resistance. Reflection. Across town, Daniel sat in the back of the training bay. He hadn't told Marcus he was coming. He didn't need to. Claire, now walking without assistance, stood beside him. Marcus noticed them but didn't call it out. He turned back to the officers. If someone is stabilizing an airway, he said, you don't remove them because you don't recognize their face. He let the weight of that settle. You assess their hands. The room absorbed that. Daniel's chest tightened slightly. He remembered the hands,
Steady.
not shaking, not panicked. Marcus stepped back from the vehicle frame. I didn't stay at that crash scene to prove a point, he said. I stayed because 7 minutes is long enough to lose someone. A beat. And short enough to save them. The instructor nodded. Training resumed, officers stepping forward, practicing evaluation before escalation. Marcus moved quietly toward the exit. Daniel caught up to him near the doorway. I heard what you told them, Daniel said. Marcus met his gaze. It's not about me, he replied. Daniel nodded. I know. Claire stepped forward, extending her hand. You didn't just save me, she said softly. Marcus shook his head once. I met the standard, he replied. He stepped outside into the afternoon light. No cameras. No microphones. Just a city moving in quiet rhythm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand apology. He didn't chase recognition. He stayed. And then he raised the standard for everyone who would arrive next.